Good morning, everyone. We are going to go a little bit into Bosch Greenstar. We're going to do a little combustion setup, converting to LP gas, how to commission it or set up the combustion correctly. And hopefully, by the time I'm out of this, you'll be able to do it easily with some confidence. And then we're going to get into the HEATRONIC 3 control, which is the main control for the boiler, and try to get into a little bit of that as far as we can without being a hands-on thing here, so that perhaps you are more familiar with the control. You can walk in, use that control as a troubleshooting tool. There's a lot of tools in it, and I'll try to teach you that. So let's get going. As Elaine mentioned, I do have a reasonable amount of experience in the field. I spent 40 years in the plumbing, heating, water conditioning trade. And then about 5 years ago, came to work for Bosch, spent 4 years in tech support, doing phones, tech support. Tom Bowen decided he'd retire, and I decided I'd like the position of trainer. So far, I'm loving it, and even in these odd times that we are, I'm still having a good time with it. So a little bit about tech support. Tech support for all of our products, 1-800-BEDERIS. It's been a number that's been there since Bederis's days, before Bosch bought Bederis and before Bosch TTNA came in. So once Bosch purchased Bederis, it's all in one now. We do have a frontline service. When you call in, if you're not on site, have as much information as you can. They're looking for customer name, address, serial number, model number, any fault codes you have, your name and number, just in case you get lost, so tech support can get right back to you. Do a little bit of basic troubleshooting before you actually call in. We've actually had people call in and say, okay, I'm on the job, what do I do next? Gee, have you taken the cover off it yet? Oh no, how do I do that? The tech support guys don't really like to hear that, because nobody's done any basics. So do some basic stuff, get some gas pressures, get your electrical voltage, see what fault codes are there. Use your brain, your eyes, your ears, your hands, all of your senses. It's pretty easy to tell, is it hot, is it cold, just by touching it. Is it making a funny noise? That type of thing. Basic hand tools you're going to have on site to pull things apart and put them back together. And then the basic equipment that you have to have: manometer, a multimeter, and a combustion analyzer. If you don't have them, don't go to the job. Stay away from the job. You don't belong there. So make sure you leave it safe. Check for carbon monoxide. All of our products require under 200 parts per million in the venting. In addition to that, check around. Check the cabinet. Make sure there's no gas leaks, that type of thing. But make sure your job is safe. You're the last guy that worked on it. And know that. It's your responsibility to tie it up and make sure everything is correct. The basics that you need. And I don't condone any one of these as far as brand goes. These are just pictures that I pulled up. You're going to need a multimeter. You are going to need a digital manometer, and you're going to need an analyzer. Plain and simple. Those are the three things that you have to have. A little bit of gas conversion itself. I think I skipped one there. Nope, we're good. All right. So your inlet gas pressure, first thing you're going to check. Make sure you've got it. Make sure it's there. Make sure it's turned on. We've had guys, I had a call from the tech support. Guy told me gas was fine, everything's good. I said, listen, humor me. Go out and get your manometer. Let's see. He says, no, I'm telling you right now, it's good. Okay, it's fine. If it's good and it's fine, everything should be running. Well, he went out to get his manometer, and I happened to be hanging on the phone with him. And as he walked by the gas meter out front, he said, there's a lock on the gas meter. They must not have paid their bill. Well, he just told me it was fine. It's really not fine. So bear that in mind. Make sure you do that little bit of troubleshooting. Make sure you touch the basics before you get in and get into a panic. Make sure you got what you got. So on our Greenstar, what we'd ultimately like to see, or what the Greenstar is ultimately happy with, is 7 inches water column in natural gas and 11 in LP. There are permissible ranges, 3.5 to 10.5 on natural. You cannot drop below 3.5. These won't run. Same with LP, 8 to 13 is permissible. You cannot drop below 8. So if you start static at 8 and then turn on the dryer, the kitchen range, the generator that's outside, and then fire up the Greenstar, and you don't have 8 inches, you're done. You won't be able to adjust this thing out. So be sure that you have everything. But the basics are make sure you have your minimum gas pressures when you first start out. The Greenstar boiler comes with a conversion kit, and in that conversion kit is a code plug. That code plug winds up in the upper top upper top left corner if you're looking from the back of that control. On a floor boiler, you'd open the door, it'd be up in the upper left. On a wall boiler, it's actually going to be in the lower right. Same place on the control, but you're going to flip that control down on a wall boiler. That code plug not only converts from natural to LP, but it also tells the control which boiler it is. So whether it's a heat only, whether it's a 57, a 100, a 131, a 151, whatever it happens to be, and whether it's a combi or a heat, it tells that control all of those, because the controls are all the same for the different boilers, and they don't know what they are without that code plug. So you are determining what that is. Check the number on the code plug, make sure it matches what you're supposed to have, that somebody didn't put the wrong code plug in the package or something to that effect, but just do a little bit of that. You're going to pull that code plug out, the natural gas code plug, and put in the LP gas code plug. You're going to fill out the conversion sticker. Actually, I don't believe there's any filling out anymore. It's all filled out for you. You simply put it on the side of the boiler that it's been converted. And you must use an analyzer to do your gas adjustments, CO and CO2 have to be done. In our new kits, well, I know within the last year or so, we're including an orifice or a fixed orifice to convert over to LP gas. Traditionally, we've used it without an orifice. It comes through with no orifice for LP. So that in natural gas, no orifice in natural, with an orifice in LP. It makes life a little bit easier and makes things start easier. If you do not have it, the throttle that you're going to adjust for high fire will actually be adjusted as an orifice. It's an adjustable orifice. That's all that is. It adjusts gas volume. So our gas valve adjusts gas pressure, and our gas throttle adjusts volume. So you don't have to have it, but it certainly makes life a lot easier with that. When we get into the combustion setup of this, 2 taps for flue gas ports that are on the vent, or one on each side. They both go to the same place. Just use one. You don't have to use them both. One of them you might even not be able to get to. It might be too close to the wall. That's why they put 2 of them in there. And then the other thing to note on the vent adapter is that in the middle of the adapter, between the 2 pipes, there's another port there. That's so you can test your inlet air. So if you test your inlet air and find out you have carbon monoxide or CO2 readings on air and not 20.9 oxygen, you might have some cross-contamination going there. The other way that's easy to check for cross-contamination is going to be do your test with the cover off and then put the cover on. Once you put that cover on the boiler, everything should be the same. Nothing should change. No CO change, no CO2 change. They ought to be all the same. If your CO2 and your CO go up, then chances are you have a leak there somewhere, either in the boiler compartment or some other exhaust gas recirculation going on back into the venting. So that's the easiest way for me. Test it with the cover off, test it with the cover back on, and see how that goes for you. Like I said, they should be the same with no leaks, with everything properly installed. Again, you're going to use an analyzer. Make sure you leave a printout. That's your stamp that you were there. For me, I take a picture of the analyzer with the date, and it date codes everything, and that way every single job shows exactly what was going on, exactly the way I left it, and exactly the way I tested it. It's covering you, and it's covering you for future issues or problems should any arise. You want to be able, when you leave that job, leave it correct and cover yourself so that you're legally covered if there does become some sort of a problem. All right, so on the control itself, to get into this control and how to get to minimum and maximum firing, you're actually going to push that little chimney sweep button. The little guy with the ladder, the serviceman, that guy right there. Push and hold that a couple of seconds, usually about 4 or 5 seconds. It's going to light up and the display is going to change a little bit. So once you press and hold that and get it lit up, that display should show you, for low fire, you're looking for 2 dashes. It's going to show you 4, then 6. Press it again. It's going to show you 2 dashes. 2 dashes, low fire. Our book calls for us to do high fire first, low fire second. Really doesn't make any difference, other than my preference is low fire first because I have a lower firing rate. I can spend a little more time in it before the boiler goes to limit, before the system warms up too much. If you've got a big system, you're in the middle of the winter time, doesn't really matter at all. But if you're trying to set these up in the fall or in the summertime, it can certainly make a big difference. If you fire this on high fire at 140,000 or 150,000 BTUs, you're going to come up pretty quickly and not be able to get rid of that heat. So for me, I set them up in low fire and take it from there and move into high fire from there. So once you press that chimney sweep, hold it, you're going to see 4 dashes show up. You're going to press it again, you're going to see 6 dashes. That's your maximum. Press it again, you're going to see those 2 dashes show up. They'll flash back and forth. Once you have that, you're in low fire. Now you're going to do some adjustments on the gas valve. So your low fire adjustment there is actually under the crown. You're going to take off number 3, the little cap. Number 1's the test port for your inlet gas pressure. Number 3 is the cap that comes off, and number 2 is actually a 4mm adjustment screw that's in there for low fire. So you are adjusting gas pressure with that regulator for low fire. So the gas valve, the way I remember it easily, gas valve is down low in the boiler. It adjusts low fire. The gas throttle is up high in the boiler. Gas throttle being high in the boiler adjusts high fire. That's my easy way to remember it. Gas valve's down low, it's low fire. And you have to adjust it that way. Low fire, adjust low fire. High fire, adjust high fire. That's it. We're done at that point. You're going to go through slow and easy, get things to adjust. A 1/16 of a turn can change you by about 0.1 on the gas valve. They do vary a little bit, so it's not carved in stone. If you guys are having a hard time starting this, and it's something you might want to write down, if you change over to LP gas without an orifice, for instance, and boiler won't start, this gas valve adjustment, if you go all the way clockwise, all the way positive, back out 3 full turns, and then on the gas throttle up top, go all the way clockwise to closed, back out 1 full turn, that boiler will start almost 100% of the time. So just 3 turns on the gas valve and then 1 turn on the gas throttle should get you going as a preliminary. The gas orifice itself should keep you from having to do that. So makes life kind of easy. So once you've adjusted your low pressure and you're getting it close to where it belongs, then you're going to work on high pressure next. When you get to the high pressure side of it, you've got a gas throttle and it's got a gray plug seal in it. You're going to break that seal out. Most of the time you got to push a screwdriver or something through the slot in it. That will break it out. That will get rid of that piece. Once you take that out, you're going to have a slot inside there to adjust with, and you're going to go back into this control. Analyzer's already in, boiler's already running. In high fire, you are looking for 9.4% CO2 on natural and 11% CO2 on LP. So as I stated earlier, we're going to take that same chimney sweep, the man with the ladder. You're going to push and hold it. It's going to light up. You're going to see the display change, and now you should see 4 dash show up. That's a maximum firing rate that will modulate. The next thing you're going to do is push it again, and you're going to wind up with 6 dashes total. With those 6 dashes, that's maximum firing rate. You're going to adjust using the gas throttle, either up or down, plus for more CO2, minus for less CO2. And those parameters that you're looking for are 9.4% CO2, 11% for LP, 8.6 natural in low fire or minimum, and 10.4 for high fire maximum. You can use O2, oxygen, no problems, can be done. For me, my preference is CO2. It's a little bit of a finer adjustment. There's a little bit more to it. Makes life just a little bit easier for me to adjust anyway. Many guys use oxygen. That's fine. No issues. No problems. So you're going to set your CO2 and your O2s all to match up low fire and high fire. And what I can tell you is that you're going to go back and forth just a little bit. Don't take big bites with this. An eighth of a turn on this high fire adjustment is big. That'll get you a full or maybe even 2% CO2, so full percentage points. You might go from 11 to 9 or 11 to 13% CO2 in there. So watch out for that. Those, for me, the width of a dime, and then weight. So the biggest thing on this is to be patient when you're doing your testing in going from low fire to high fire and high fire to low fire. Take little adjustments. Get your values moving in the correct direction. So get your CO2, let's say in low fire. I'll give you an example. Low fire, you're at 8%. You're going to increase gas and get it going toward 10.4. Don't take it all. So you might start at 8, get it to move to 9. Go up to high fire, start on your high fire adjustment. If you're high, you're going to start bringing it down. If you're low, you're going to start bringing it up. Don't take it all the way if it's way off. If it's off a half of a percent, that's okay. Take it. If it's off more than 1 full percent, you absolutely want to go easy on that and take small bites. You're just going to move from high fire to low fire and then back up to high fire, down to low fire, giving your analyzer a little bit of time to actually compensate for what's in the lines and get a good reading. Once you get it moved in the right direction and you get it all dialed in perfect, you're great. Things are going to stay right there. And then you're going to test your CO. CO has to be below 200 parts per million. Absolutely below 200 parts per million. With good setup, this boiler will do about 5 to 10 parts per million in low fire and somewhere between 10 and 50 parts per million in high fire on a Greenstar boiler. So real low readings. We see them as low as 0 or 1 part per million in low fire and down around the 10 in high fire. It's pretty low. It's pretty clean. If it's not left clean, you're going to have problems further down the road. And you also have the potential for CO poisoning to hurt somebody. You don't want to do that. So again, once you're done that, go through your emissions test button, the chimney sweep, the guy with the ladder, the man with the hat. Push it a few times, it'll go back to your supply temperature, and then you can cover your ports back up. Make sure you put that cap back on your port. Otherwise, you wake up at 1 in the morning and go, hey, I left that cap off of that port. And you're calling the customer at 1 in the morning, you're saying, hey, turn your boiler off right now. So nothing happens. Ask me how I know that one. It's happened before. We're going to get into the HEATRONIC control, and hopefully deep enough so you guys can use it as a tool. So it will work well for you. The HEATRONIC control is that main control. on the front of the boiler. This particular picture has our FW200 control set in the center of our HEATRONIC control. Normally you would see that come through. It would be a blank in the middle, so there would be no extra screen, no extra knob in the middle. That whole piece would be missing. And you would add this FW200 as an outdoor reset control. We've eliminated that or taken it out of production. And now the chosen control for this would be the CRC 200. It comes with the wall boilers. It does not come with the floor boilers. And that can be used as either a room reset control or outdoor reset control. Outdoor reset as long as we add an outdoor sensor to that. So we're going to add our 4K outdoor sensor on our CRC 200, and then we'll do our outdoor reset with that. This control here, the one we're going to deal with today, is the main HEATRONIC 3 control. And the main switch is that round knob on there, that push button switch. Next thing that happens is once it's fired up, you're going to see that little LED for the burner light up. It's going to tell me that the burner's on. Next one we got is our service key or service function keys, wrench button, whatever we like to call it. Wrench button gets us in and out of service functions. We've got this burner test key of the service guy, the man with the ladder, the man with the hat. He gets us in and out of each service function as well as going into a forced combustion. So he does a bunch of different jobs. We have our heating supply temperature, and that's set on a 0 through max, a 1 through 6. Max being 194, 6 being about 178 degrees. And those are all covered in the manual. They don't set them perfect because each one makes a little bit of a difference. In this way, they didn't have to come up with a temperature from what you're setting it. So just consult the manual if you want to get close. Like I said, max is 194, 6 is about 178. I think 5 is around 160. It goes down from there. Next thing we're going to look at is our domestic hot water temperature knob. Again, labeled 1 through 6 plus max, NMIN, and E. E is for eco or economy. It sits around 122 degrees. But know that when you turn that domestic hot water dial or knob, the domestic hot water set point that you are setting comes up in the display and blinks for 30 seconds. So your boiler temp might be 160. And as you turn that knob or adjust the domestic hot water temp knob, that 160 changes over to a blinking number. That's your set point. So anywhere from 95 degrees all to 158 on a heat only and 140 on a combi boiler. So 6 is 140, max is still 140 on a combi. 6 is about 140 on a heat only with an indirect hooked up to it. Max is 158 on an indirect. That's as much as we can get out of that. We're going to look at the keypad lock button. It has a couple of functions. One of those functions is to lock the keypad. The other function is to advance service functions up and down. From there, our eco or comfort button on a combi boiler. The eco button, when not lit, allows the boiler to maintain temperature on the plate heat exchanger so that if the customer turns the hot water on in a faucet, everything's warmed up. It's all ready to go. We simply go into a pre-prepare of the boiler and we're off and running. If we are set in the eco with the eco button lit up, that green light lit on the eco button, then it can go to room temperature and we do not maintain our plate heat exchanger in a combi boiler. All right, so if it's lit up, they're going to save a little money, but their hot water is going to be a little slower getting there. If it's not lit in its default position, then they're going to spend a little bit more money to maintain their domestic hot water, but the convenience of opening the faucet and having almost immediate hot water, just whatever's in that line. Our reset button does a couple of different things. It does a complete reset. It does momentary resets. Know that that's a reset button. Usually it's a push of more than 3 seconds to get something to reset. System pressure is on that gauge right on the front, and that's directly put down to the boiler supply manifold that's underneath the boiler. So that's reading what the boiler supply pressure is. And then your LED display showing you fault codes, other different symbols that we'll get into, and also the boiler temp. And like I said, domestic hot water temp blinking when the domestic is actually when you've turned the knob. So it's going to show you what the domestic set point is. Other things you're going to see on this control in that reading. I did mention you're going to see some other things. That's where you're going to see your 6 dashes for high fire. You're going to see 4 dashes for your maximum adjustable heat output. All right, so that's working as a set maximum. We look at service function 1A. We can look at what that set max is, and we can change that. I'll go into that a little bit. Excuse me. Minimum output is low fire, and that locks that burner down for 30 minutes into low fire. L is thermal disinfection, and we can set that on heat only so that we can actually increase on a timed basis the temperature of the tank to disinfect thermally any possibility of bacteria in there. It's going to bring that tank up to about 158 degrees, maybe even a little bit higher than that. Get you well above the 140 that will kill Legionella and other bacteria in there. So can be programmed in to do it on a periodic basis. LO is a fault code that people call in with every once in a while. I have a fault LO. Yeah, it's because the buttons are locked. That little key, you push and release the key, the LO goes away. It unlocks those buttons. The famous sideways T's or H's with the outsides missing, or what is that funny shape? Every time we turn the control power off and turn it back on, we go back into a siphon fill or trap fill program. It's a 15-minute program for trap fill that makes sure that our condensate trap is full of water all the time and doesn't have any problems being dry. That's why every time it's turned off, it goes back on. It also does it once every 28 days by default and can be adjusted to do more or a little bit less. It can be turned off in the control. I do not recommend turning it off. If you turn it off and you forget to turn it back on, stay off. That trap can become empty and put CO out into the room, potentially harming one of your customers. I don't know if you guys can hear all the commotion going on here. They're actually changing out a propane tank out right outside of my building here. So bear with me on that if you can hear it, if it's bothering you. Next one is the air vent function. Anytime we turn the control on brand new, reset the control back to factory default, or actually go into service functions, we can turn on this air vent function. What it does is it turns the pump on, the pump pulses, comes on, off, on, off. It's designed to get rid of the air that might be in the system or in the boiler side of this. So air that's in the domestic water side, when we're first turning things on in the plate heat exchanger, air that's in the valving, air that's in the boiler loop itself. That vent function is 4 minutes. Can be taken out, but generally we leave that right in and leave it right there as it should be. Gradient control doesn't show up very often on this. It's too rapid of an increase on the flow temperature or system side. It's going to turn the heat off for 2 minutes. We don't see it very often. What we often see is the boiler going to 199 or to block limit on that. So gradient control, we don't see that often, but occasionally we will. Mostly on systems that are piped incorrectly, where we have zone valves that might shut down before the call for heat does, that type of thing, where we shut the flow off and all of a sudden our boiler loop is increasing so quickly, or our system side is also increasing so quickly it will shut it down for a couple of minutes. The value stored packets that will show up, um, anytime you change a service function or change anything in there, you're going to press that little chimney sweep guy and you're going to hold it for more than 3 seconds. It's going to save whatever function you've changed and save your changes. The two brackets show up and then go right away. So if you don't see the brackets, save it again. If you do see the brackets, you've saved it. You can go right back in and see if you've saved what you thought you did. That makes good sense. Next one is the IN, showing us that we have a service that's due, set by whatever interval you want to set at. Generally, 1 year is a nice interval, gets you, a customer will go down and see IN. He either knows that he's got to call you for service because that's what it is, or feels that something else wrong. So if you've seen something that's different on there that he hasn't seen before, he's going to call you. These boilers should only need to be serviced or taken apart and cleaned about once every 5 years. And should you wait for that 5 years to get back to your customer, they might forget who you are. So for me, it is going to that job once a year to do a safety check, whether you do it as a preventive maintenance, the basics or something like that, just a service call, that type of thing, or however you want to deal with it. It's a nice reminder that it'll keep that customer calling you back and keep you on their list, at the top of their list for service on that particular boiler. The two other symbols, or two L's, I don't know what you want to call that one. We don't see very often. It's telling me that the pump might have seized. That's going to show up as a fault code E9. Usually E9 shows up before that pump block shows up. The single dash that you see there you're going to see that if you press a single button. The double dash if you press two buttons at the same time. I'll show you the reasons for that as we go in. And then floor drying program was designed as a way to get in using that FW200 control to do radiant floor drying and getting radiant floors set up for it. Most of the time in this country, we don't have a boiler installed when we actually have the floor poured. Usually the boiler comes after. So it's usually in the US a non-event. We don't see it happening very often. And with that, we're going to get into a little bit of service functions. So this is the functions that are available in our first level service code or service functions. This is in the book under overview of service functions. Please make yourselves familiar with this. This is a fantastic tool. It also allows you to custom tune this boiler and the control to do exactly what you want it to do to maximize economy and make sure everything is right. We go through a couple of the things in order to get in there. To see this, you're going to press and hold that service key or the wrench button. It's going to light up, and usually you will see 1A. 1A is our max heating output. We can adjust that from 30 to 100% and lock it in. So if I have a heating system that I only need, let's say I only need 50,000 BTUs, I can lock that, and I've got let's say it's a 100,000 BTU boiler. I can lock that thing down to 50% at 50,000 BTUs, and I'm locked in, good to go. Boiler's going to run nice and efficient. It's still got a turn down to its minimum. Great efficiency, great economy, and still allows for max output on your domestic hot water. 1B will limit your domestic hot water maximum in the event you have a very low flow. Let's say we're only using 0.7, 0.8 all the time. Pretty easy to overcome that maximum the domestic output going out to the faucet of 0.7, 0.8. So we can actually limit this down 70%, 80%, 90% firing rate on your domestic hot water. Pump control module does that. Pump mode, you can change modes in the pump. These are all available in the book, in the manual itself. 2B we use quite a bit. Max supply temperature. That is your supply sensor that's on the system loop going out to the supply. And the reason that we would want to limit that would be maybe a complete radiant system. We don't want it to ever go over 125 or 130 degrees, whatever you happen to want. You can lock that in and it'll stay right in there. So we lock that down to 125. We'll never see in that floor, we'll never see more than 125. 2C, air bleed function. That's your two circles or a pair of dice alternating with the temperature. All right, and that's going to bleed out any air that might be in there. 2D is thermal disinfection. That's where you're going to set that one for your time frame and when you want it. 2F is telling me what the operating mode of the boiler is. 3A is your automatic lock. So when you're done with the control, it will automatically lock if you want it to. 3B is an anti-cycle time that shortens things up or lengthens them out. So you can have a longer differential or a shorter differential. Cycling time, and then your switching differential can go from anywhere from 1 degree up to 18 degrees on a switching differential. Minimum heating output for heating and domestic is 3D. And that's going to set the boiler modulation to a minimum. So right now on a 151, I believe we go down on LP about 36,000, somewhere in that general vicinity. You could actually lock that down so it never goes less than 60,000, 60%. That can be done as well. A couple of the other ones, max heating temp of the heat exchanger 4B, that's plate heat exchanger. The duration for keeping your plate hot, that's 3F. There is an audible warning in there. You can shut that off. I prefer to leave it on. It beeps, it's kind of annoying, and it's kind of a beep in the background that most people can hear. They'll call you if there's a problem, so that's why you kind of leave that there. 4E is what appliance it is. Is it a combi or is it a heat only? 4F is that trap fill function I had alluded to a little bit earlier. It can be turned on maximum, turned on minimum, or turned off. Do not turn it off. It on. And leave it in the default, wherever that will run in the max. Your inspection interval, if it comes up, is 5A to reset it. 5F will set the interval time. So you go into 5F, set what you want. Then 5A resets if it's gone past that time. Customers called you, you go back there to get rid of that LN or IN for inspection. You're going to just do 5A and that'll get you out of that. A few other things. 6A, pretty well used for me, is a last fault. That's going to tell you what fault code might have been a E9, EA, D3, D5. Depends on which fault was there. So you'll be able to find that. 6B we don't use too much. That's the current voltage for room temperature for terminal 2. That's your thermostat connection. Supply temperature, demand outdoor reset control. We don't use very often on that one. Current volume flow for your turbine under 6.D. Absolutely use that all the time in troubleshooting for domestic hot water. So you'll be able to see what you're actually doing. And then the other one kind of that we use or can be used fairly often is 0.D as in David. That's going to be your elevation adaptive setting. So that higher elevations above 2,000 feet, you're going to go in and reset that. And that gives you your elevation. So once you've done your first service level, you're going to go to the key lock button and the eco button at the same time. You're going to press and hold those. It's going to come up with this whole next thing. So you're going to see 8A. That's what software version is. 8B is what code plug is in it. 8C and D don't do much of anything. They're just there. 8E is in Edward, is a reset of the control back to factory settings. So that brings us back to that. 8F is permanent ignition. That just turns the igniter on. So you can see what's going with that. It just stays on the whole time that things are going. You'll be able to hear it, see it, and check out what it's doing. 9A will set it to run constant and just bounce off a limit. 9B is what your current fan speed is. 9C is what your current output is. So you can use 9C as a troubleshooting. Let's say you don't have enough heat in the house. Boiler's running but won't come up to temperature. House won't come up to temperature. Go into 9C. See what the current output is. Somebody might have set 1A down to 30% and left it there inadvertently. Now you got 30% of your max heating output going at 0 degrees outside. Not quite enough. A.B is the temperature of the domestic hot water plate outlet, and A.C is what your tank temperature is on an indirect. C.D is your current heat demand. So go into the manual, look through these things, use these service functions to help you in troubleshooting. For instance, what I would do on a domestic hot water call where the boiler goes to limit right away and we still get no domestic, first I go to 6D. I see what my current flow rate is. If I have 1.5, 2 gallons a minute, next I go to make sure I have which current demand I have. Do I have domestic hot water? So C.D should show me 0.2. And then I go to A.B and see what the water temperature is coming out. So if the water temperature is coming out at 65 degrees, I'm using 1.2 gallons a minute and I'm on a call for domestic hot water and my boiler's going to limit, I probably have a plate heat exchanger that's blocked up on the heating side. All right, so can't get rid of the heat that's in the plate. We're going into a little bit about fault codes and what shows what's there. So one of the things that I used all the time, the latest fault. What was your last fault code? A lot of times people don't know it's been reset. It's been turned off, turned back on. Now it's running. This will give you what that last fault was. So whether it's EA or E9 or D5 or D3, whatever that fault code might be, that's what's going to show up there. And it only stores one, so it's a single fault code. Ew, too many slides. All right, so this is the list of fault codes. These are in the back of the manual. It happens to be table 38, and I think that's the same in all of these manuals. All of the different codes that you might find. A8, if you see in an A8, reset your control. Under 8E, Edward, under service functions, reset it back to factory and see if that goes away. Sometimes it's just a communication fault where the control can't read what it is. C6 is a fan code. D3, pretty common. That's your high limit or what we're going to call an external guard or low water cutoff circuit. So if you've got a low water cutoff in there and it's got some air in it, it's going to show you D3. D5 is another one that comes up a lot. That's your external supply temperature sensor on a low loss header that was there and then got unplugged and maybe got plugged back in and not recognized. So again, plug it back in, make sure it's there, test it, make sure it's all good. The rest of them are just basic codes that go through. There's explanations for them in the book and how to go through each one and troubleshoot this correctly. So there's some troubleshooting charts in there. That is all of these. EA is the most famous one we have. And something that's not specifically on here under EA is looking for it doesn't fire 5 times in a row. So condensate drain could be blocked up on that and holding water back. That's going to choke off, so to speak, the venting. It's not going to run correctly. So something to look for there. The lists are all there. FO, one of my favorites, just because it is. The rest of them, the temperature gradient, like I said, that doesn't come up very often. Usually we see E9 instead of that. So be familiar with your fault codes and know that they are in the back of the book. The other thing I don't have a slide for here is and I forgot where I was going with this. Well, that one's gone, but I don't have a slide for it anyway, so that's why it's gone. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so we're looking at warranty claims. This holds a limited lifetime warranty on the heat exchanger, 5 years on parts and labor. ABC guys are going to get an additional 1 year on parts and labor as long as you register it in 30 days. So this thing has to be registered. You guys should be registering them for your customer. BoschProHVAC.com get you to the registration portal. Anything that's labor claims, warranty claims, labor included, are going to go through your wholesaler. They're going to get you all of the correct forms. They're going to do everything for you and get you through to our warranty department, where the distributor wholesaler will be able to deal with that claim. So they deal with the credits and what's going on with warranty directly with our warranty department. So as mentioned, that ABC guy, you're going to get an extra 1 year parts and labor as long as you register that. Our spare parts that happen, everything's stocked in our New Hampshire warehouse. All right. All your distributors, your wholesalers are going to order those parts from the warehouse. You should be able to get them. If for some reason you have some kind of an emergency, there is a safety for that where you can call in, talk to customer service, pay retail or list price, and get the part shipped out same day or next day. All right, so just a service that's there if you have to have it. Our ABC program gets you that 1 year extended warranty, get you on our site, our Bosch Pro HVAC site. For lead generation, you simply have your customer will type in a zip code, and if you're on the list and you're closest, you're going to show up. It shows how many miles away from that customer you are, or that zip code you are. Also get you a direct priority line through to our tech support. If there's 10 in the queue for tech support, regular calls, and you are next, you will jump right to the front because you're an ABC guy. There's some point systems, there's some promotions, there's different discounts, all kinds of different things for ABC guys. Also some great learning or training programs as well. So Bosch-abcpartner.com gets you there. If you're not an ABC contractor, consider signing up. Certainly a great program. We have our literature found online, BoschHeatingCooling.com. We'll get you to all your literature. And then your E-Academy, keep an eye on the E-Academy. It's going to be something that's up and coming. You're going to be able to actually sign up for online classes or courses and take them on that E-Academy. So keep an eye on that. For me, my little buddy that sits in my office most of the time, and believe it or not, that's one of his favorite chairs. He jumps up on another chair, jumps up onto that Greenstar thing, and watches me over the desk. So I am done with this program or presentation. I encourage you guys to ask questions. If I don't have an answer today, I'll get you one right away. But it's pretty hard to stump me. Try it.